All right. Hello, everyone. We're live.
Hey.
Make sure. So many windows open, trying to close. Here we go. But yeah, how's it going, Cameron, Rachel?
Very
Great.
good.
Super
Did
good.
you say we're live?
Yep, we're live.
Perfect. Welcome out, everybody. Welcome. I can't see when we're in a new format, and before I had the YouTube window pulled up, and I would count or rather look at how many people were in the chat, but I can't see what we're looking at right now. But for those of you that are here, welcome. Thanks for being here. We're super excited to get into tonight's material. This is a pretty meaty chapter. It's a pretty chunky chapter, so we're probably going to split it up into 2 or 3 parts. I think right now the plan is to do it in 3 parts. So we're going to take the first leg tonight, which will kind of set the groundwork and the framing for the rest of the chapter. It's going to roll right over from chapter 13. So a lot of the themes sort of carry through, and you'll get a sense for the continuity when we get into it. Rodolfo, before we jump in, do you have any housekeeping or anything that we should get up to speed on?
Um, no, well, I get we're gonna add a couple of maybe in a newsletter, send some of the updates on the tool. I think we have done 4 or 5 things worth mentioning on the tool that maybe you want to check it out when you guys can. Well, when you get, we will show a video and explain all of these new features. Some of them are awesome, and yeah, I think the tool is getting very good. And then we are planning to have some more training on the tool that we have some team members helping us to put together, and then a few more things coming in very soon too. So yeah, stay tuned.
Anything that you want to give people a sneak peek on, or do they have to go and
Yeah. Let me maybe
dig it
share.
out, David?
Let's see. And I know a lot of people have been asking for a while on the slides, and we are rebuilding a whole new interface, better, that's going to actually sync with searchdiligently.net. So we will have searchdiligently.com for our content, and here we will give you access to for you to take all of the lessons. We are right now in ISAF 14, but you will be able to see all the slides and add notes, and we're going to add fun resources for you to start digesting everything we have shared, put it together now as resources. That was an original idea, and we started with a platform, but yeah, there was so many hiccups, and then we decided to build our own. And the best thing is going to be sync with searchdiligently.net. So we will have 2 sites, but then you don't need to have 2 logins. That is going to be a one single login. And then we're gonna share the interface, and it's going to be very dynamic. So we are probably maybe a month away. We'll see, but yeah, working on it.
Sweet, awesome stuff. Yeah, there's cool stuff happening here, guys. It's really exciting to see some of this coming together and blossoming and blooming and all that. So definitely stay tuned and stay buckled in, because it just gets better. So, okay, I think we should go ahead and jump on in here. Rodolfo, if you want to go into full screen. Before we, I guess, get into any of the text, Rachel, Rodolfo, is there anything that you guys would want to say to sort of set the stage for the context for chapter 14? Any high-level stuff, big picture stuff that we should know?
Rachel, you want to give us
That's
a
a good
summary?
question. Well, last week I kind of talked about how, just real quick, how Babylon is kind of really like the frame of the whole thing, and how all the nations, basically in the block of 13, chapter 13 to 23, and how those nations kind of represent all these different aspects of Babylon as a spiritual category. And so instead of looking at them individually, you can look at them as types and as a part of a whole conglomerate. And that's kind of just really where I landed. But this chapter is a little bit tricky. It has some interesting pieces in the beginning, and then it's got this main part about, the whoever ascends and then gets cast down into the pit. It's kind of all over the place. I had a little bit of tricky time trying to see where all the pieces fit. So I don't know.
Yeah. And that's what we want to convey is that we don't have all the answers to harmonize Isaiah and also the timeline and all of the other prophecies. I think all of us in our minds, we are trying to squeeze all of these different players and places and characters, and we know some of the events, but we don't have necessarily that perfect timeline linear, right?
Yeah.
But we are going to do our best. I think one thing that we do is we go deep and research and make connections, and then there are things that only make sense through the promptings of the Spirit, and it can show us what we want to know that's going to be valuable for when these things happen. So and then when everything play out, we will know for surety, like Nephi said, we will know for surety when the words of Isaiah shall be fulfilled. So it won't be more guessing, and then maybe it's going to be more simple than we think it is. But
it's the revelation, right? It's the pyramid we talked about all the way back in our very first sort of episode here. I've been thinking a lot, just on that note, as kind of a side note. I've been thinking recently, because Easter's coming up, about the road to Emmaus and that story there, and really just kind of how on Resurrection Sunday, on Easter Sunday, how unprepared everybody was to make sense of what they were seeing. It seems like in large part the fact that Cleopas and his companion couldn't recognize Christ was because they couldn't see the pattern, right? They couldn't make sense of the data. It's like something wasn't adding up. It wasn't coherent for them. And then when Christ is revealed, and this is true for the disciples as well, then the Spirit starts opening their understanding, and they go back and he becomes the key through which they can unlock everything in retrospect, right? And that's true for all the prophets and for the law. And so I think that there's a similar sense in our day, sort of on the eve of the eschaton, if you will, the apocalypse, there's like some level of mystery. There's some level of, and like, I think we're intended to kind of live through that to some degree, because it's our story. This is the one that we're participating in, and ultimately, things come together in the same way, and then it all is clear in hindsight's 2020 and all that. But
great point. Yeah, I think it's okay to be okay with not having it fully figured out.
Yeah, really good to be acquainted with the pieces and the patterns, so that way, like, as the Spirit kind of starts speaking to you, it has a language and a framing, through which it can express and things that it can pull together and bring together. So that's kind of the value of what we hope to do with the course and tonight. And if you guys have questions, we'll do our absolute best to answer and talk through it with you guys. And we'll go from there.
Awesome.
This is just reviewing again, just that aspect of Babylon being a whole for all the parts of this block of chapters. That just kind of names some of them. We don't have to spend too much time on that.
So this really is like judgment on the other nations, judgment on the Gentile nations. It's kind of the overarching theme, would you say?
Yeah, and just that I guess for me, I really recognize that Babylon is really a system And it's like this, it's an empire, it's a system, it's something we're all participating, whether we really want to or not. How do you exit it? Do you do it spiritually? Do you do it physically? But it represents this order of, elite humanity that, is very much in a caste system, and it's very monetary, and it's all the things that hopefully Zion will not be,
Yeah.
Just interesting.
Yeah, I mean, another thing that I've kind of been meditating on recently, when Christ comes, and Christ is a key, right? The key to prophecy in a lot of respects. He's positioned as kind of an apocalyptic. I mean, this is what Messiah is there's an apocalyptic sort of undertone, and it's all about this transition from the age that is to the age to come, which is to say the age of Babylon into the age of Zion. The times of the Gentiles, if you will, to when Israel is restored as the head of the nations and Christ reigns as king over the earth. So, yeah, the sort of inversion that we see is kind of the theme that defines this whole story. It's Christ says, those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted, in a sense. And yeah, that's the judgment that we see being poured out here. Those that have exalted themselves, those that have taken glory to themselves, be it politically or economically or what have you, to Rachel's point, the system, right? What kind of pattern are they participating in? If it's one of self-exaltation, which is, inherently Babylonian, and it's selfish and ultimately based in fear, then yeah, that's where we see the judgment. So
maybe one thing also to add is notice so when we talk about a few weeks ago, Cameron, and we mentioned the Nephi 21 and some of Micah chapter 7, right? The remnant who does judgment, or the king of Assyria. One thing that when it comes to the Gentiles, that I forgot about it, that I knew before very clearly, always have that as a distinction. I started looking at for example, in First Nephi 14 and second, so that's when Nephi sees the clay in our church who's persecuting the saints. She is Babylon. She is the harlot entity. And then you have the Gentiles, and then you have the nations of the Gentiles. And then in 2 Nephi 6, was Jacob mentioned Isaiah 49. And I have a verse later in the slides, but he also make a distinction between some Gentiles and then the nations, plural of the Gentiles, also in chapter 10. And then in 2 Nephi 21, we don't have the plural, but then 21 and 20, we do have the reference to the nations of the Gentiles, who seems that in the end time become some type of coalition or one world order who oppress and the people. Now, there is a spiritual oppression that Babylon always do, and the problem is when you are trying to get out of Babylon, is when Babylon turns the worst. Mm-hmm. It's like a relationship, like the stats, that is the chance of being killed by a partner are higher when you're trying to leave. This happens with Babylon. It shows the true colors when we are trying to leave Babylon. Literally, it becomes oppression. And it seems that at that point, it's going to be some type of union. And those Gentiles are different than the ones who are playing a role of a king and a queen. And I wonder if now Isaiah is showing us this Babylon oracle and then the nations to maybe point to that idea of coalition among the nations, which then they start eating each other. They start war among them. That happens in First Nephi 14, and
right.
And then that, if we look at it maybe sequentially, I don't know. There is a lot of crossover with the king of Assyria, but that's a moment when the woman is so vulnerable, and the king of Assyria seems to come after that as a new another beast, a new entity, who will bring that other new world order. So just a thought.
Yeah. No, that's good. Layers to it. There's the verse in First Nephi 14 where it says, I think it's verse 13. It says that the mother of abominations has gathered together all the nations of the Gentiles
Totally.
to make war against the Lamb. And what's interesting is if you kind of cross-reference the description of the whore, the mother of abominations in First Nephi 14 and what it's doing, it's clearly a parallel to the beast in the book of Revelation, right? That the mother of abominations is sort of driving. And that's like a composite figure of all of these Gentile empires that have come before, a beast, and it's got 7 heads and it's got 10 horns. And, it's like this sort of composite of a lion and a bear and an eagle and all sorts of things. So yeah, to your point about this kind of like conglomerate coalition, that definitely seems to be what's emerging there, what's being kind of pointed at.
There were 2 words I looked up in this chapter that both had a definition of coalition. I think one of them was rest, and I can't think what the other one was. I'll have to look and see. There were 2 different words, that meant coalition in one of the root words. That's weird.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
right? Because these 2 chapters are a unit and end the unit. So 13, 14. This is somebody came out with that. I cannot claim the one who saw this, but there was a scholar who looked into the parallelism between 13 and 14, and maybe we can make some connections here. But you have cosmic judgment at the beginning of chapter 13 against Babylon. We have the stretched hand reference. Then we have the overthrow of the Babylon as kingdom, and then in the middle we have this 1, 2, 3 technically Israel restoration, and then from 4 we have now the overthrow of Babylon's king, the king of Babylon, and then also a reference to the Assyrian, also with a stretch, and the reference to the stretched hand at the end. So maybe we see here that the cosmic judgment parallels with the Assyrian, and then we have Babylon and the king of Babylon, and the center, of course, is going to be the restoration of the house of Israel. And all of this actually facilitates the restoration of Israel. So in 2 Nephi 10, verse 17, says that the Lord cannot fulfill his covenant, speaking about the covenant with the house of Israel, unless he destroy the secret work of darkness and murder and of abominations. And so that's in the way for the covenant to be fulfilled. And it seems that the Assyrian comes as a vengeance to the secret combination that's been under Mystery Babylon. And it's been terrible thing happening. So
quick question, while we're kind of here at this point. In a end time context, Rodolfo, do you see the, I guess just to follow up on what we were talking about a moment ago, the judgment on Assyria and then the rise of Babylon and the judgment on Babylon as sort of being 2 distinct things that are similar in nature, or are they like 2 different symbols that are pointing at the same event?
I personally see it different. I see it, and I don't know, there is some crossover on the time, like no one happens first, or maybe there is a sequence, but I do feel, for instance, in Revelation 12, right, we have the dragon who is persecuting the women to the wilderness. And then, so that parallels a lot with 1 Nephi 14. And then we have the end of the nations, and 1 Nephi 14 also, that the mother of all harlots gathering those nations, those nations start fighting among them. And then it's then when Nephi stopped to seeing the rest of the vision. And then it says like John will give us the rest. So a lot of what happens after in the book of Revelation is about the rising of now the other beast in Revelation 13, which is the Antichrist and so forth. And I see as distinct entities. And yeah, I don't see necessarily being the same. And then in the book of Isaiah, definitely we see that the king of Assyria playing a role of coming first deceptively in Isaiah chapter 7, but then he is the one who started overthrowing the nations. And whatever coalition there is, one between Ephraim and Damascus, and we can talk about that later in Isaiah 17, what that means. He is the one who comes and destroy all of these nations and all of that coalition against the king of Assyria. There is a coalition. So yeah, that's how I see it, but doesn't mean that that's the only way to see it.
I like it. Okay, chapter 14. I can kick us off if you guys would like.
Please.
For Yahweh shall have compassion on Jacob, and shall yet choose Israel, and shall set upon them their land, and the sojourner shall join himself to them, and they shall attach themselves to the house of Jacob. And people shall take them, and bring them to their place, and the house of Israel shall take them as an inheritance upon the land of Yahweh, as men servants and as maidservants, and they shall be captors of their captors, and they shall rule over their oppressors. So this, of course, is getting at the reversal of circumstances that Christ kind of talks about, with the notion that those who exalt themselves will be brought low, and those who humble themselves will be brought high. This is the inversion, right? After the Lord's people have suffered, the Lord will have compassion on them. He yet chooses Israel. He yet remembers his promise that he's made to them. And ultimately, they're brought out of their, the chains in which they found themselves bound in their scattered condition. And the Lord remakes them. And because they're made holy, as we read in other places, they're made the head of the nations.
Yeah, I think we have a few slides for, and yeah, this is the inversion. So this is post. That's very important on this little chiasm here is post overthrown of Babylon. So that is the context for these verses in Isaiah. And yeah, you mentioned that compassion, Cameron, and the Hebrew is Rasham, which is translated in the King James as mercy, but it's linked to the covenant. That's 2 Kings 13, and then it's the same word that in Isaiah 49, when the Lord is asking Zion, can a woman have no compassion for the, what is the word that he uses for the
sucking child?
For the child of the womb, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she will forget, actually, and the Lord said, I will not forget. And the Lord is going to be moved to compassion, and covenant is absolutely important on this, that when there is a covenant, the Lord is moved to mercy, to compassion. And I was reading some verses in Alma 7, right, that it's because of Christ's atonement that he is full of compassion, and he is trying to always to extend the second chance to the people under the conditions of repentance. But when there is a covenant, the Lord eventually always remember the covenant. Sorry. And here we see a couple of references that the Isaiah 54, for example, that we have the judgment, a little wrath, I hid my face from thee for a moment, but with everlasting kindness. And this everlasting kindness in Hebrew is love. It's a type of love. This is the sure mercies of David. and the next chapter, Isaiah 55, pointing to the Davidic covenant. David means beloved, but with everlasting kindness will I have mercy on thee, said the Lord thy Redeemer. And then we have a few more that, for example, my kindness shall not depart from thee, never shall my covenant of peace be removed, said the Lord, that my mercy on thee. And then in Jeremiah, is a direct link to this verse here in Isaiah 14. I will show mercies unto you, that he might have mercy upon you and cause you to return to your own land. Therefore, thus said the Lord, this is in Ezekiel, now will bring again the captivity of Jacob and have mercy upon the house of Israel, and I will be jealous for my holy name. And that's the Lord claiming back his people. And that word, I believe, here yet is that means a second chance. Again, the Lord is extending his hands because of the covenant. So, any thoughts?
No, that's good. Okay, so in relation to, I guess, covenants, I was just thinking of mentioning the fact that, well, and we have inheritance here. Basically, we're kind of talking about covenant blessings. We're talking about inheritance of land, later on also offspring. And I was just thinking about this aspect of when the Lord divides his nations and inheritance among them. So, and then he keeps Jacob as his portion. And that's just here in Deuteronomy. I want to go into this like in depth later on, but there's a lot of other scriptures that connect to it, and like the idea of the assembly of the gods from Psalm 82. And so I want to do it justice, but I want to come back to this some more. I don't know if you guys have anything just to add on it, but also the fact that I forgot early in this verse, it's talking about Lord being a father and having bought his people in essence as like a redeemer, right? And so he's the one who makes them, establishes them, and that has to do with like setting them in their land to make or establish. Anything else?
Well, no, that we talk about it, Joshua, right? He divides the portions, and then there is a direct reference to the mighty one, strong, and in section 85, verse 7 and 8. And he's the type of Joshua in the end time too, who divides the land and provides the portion. Yeah, the portion for his people too. So same word as in section 85.
Yeah, good connection. Okay, so sorry, you guys. Sometimes I have to think of how was I connecting this to there? So we talked about, okay, compassion on Jacob and choosing Israel. And obviously those two words to me, they have like covenant language, but I was thinking about what's the idea of being chosen. And I was like, oh, we got to do the DNC verse about many being called, but few chosen, just because in relation to this idea of like exalting yourself above where you should, and being brought low was kind of ties into the same idea. So I'll just read real quick and then we can. Okay, so this is DNC 121, 32 to 40. According to that which was ordained in the midst of the council of the eternal God of all other gods before this world was. Again, that's like the idea of this assembly of gods and there being one God in the center of him. For this world was, that should be reserved unto the finishing and the end thereof, when every man shall enter into his eternal presence and into his immortal rest. And we're going to talk about rest in two places in Isaiah 14. Behold, there are many called, but few are chosen. And why are they not chosen? Because their hearts are set so much upon the things of this world and aspire to the honors of men. They do not learn this one lesson, that the rights of the priesthood are inseparably connected with the powers of heaven, and that the powers of heaven cannot be controlled nor handled only upon the principles of righteousness, that they may be conferred upon us, it is true. But when we undertake to cover our sins, or to gratify our pride, or vain ambition, or to exercise control or dominion or compulsion upon the souls of the children of men in any degree of unrighteousness. Behold, the heavens withdraw themselves. The Spirit of the Lord is grieved, and when it is withdrawn, amen to the priesthood or the authority of that man. Behold, ere he is aware, he is left unto himself to kick against the pricks, to persecute the saints, and to fight against God. We have learned by sad experience that it is the nature and disposition of almost all men, as soon as they get a little authority, as they suppose, they will immediately begin to exercise unrighteous dominion. Hence, many are called, but few are chosen.
Well, I mean, I think that just gets right at the heart of this couplet from Christ, right? That those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. If you are using the grace that God has given you, so to speak, to exalt yourself, to gratify your pride or your vain ambition, or to exercise control or dominion, then you will be brought low. And I think that's what this principle is. The scripture is kind of highlighting here. That's the principle.
I laugh. You see certain people in power, and there is a cockiness and a whole demeanor that goes with it. But I was talking to, I think it was my brother, about I was like, maybe I haven't ever actually had any power and let it go to my head. I don't know that I've had this trial yet. I don't know. I don't really want power. I have no desire, but then I realized maybe I haven't had any. Maybe this is, I haven't had an opportunity to really test this out and see. But I have to laugh because, it says almost all men, and you can look back at so many things and so many people, leaders that are brought to power, and how do you wield that power of the priesthood and authority in a way that is righteous? It seems like it's really hard for people.
There's a similar sort of idea. Joseph and Brigham echoed the sentiment, which was something like, one day this people will be exalted with riches, and they'll be tried by riches far more than they were ever tried by poverty, or something to that effect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's the what the harlot offered. The idea of a harlot is that she wears the priesthood colors: scarlet, purple, the gold, the stones. That's the clothing of the high priest in Exodus 28.
It's like the priest and the bride together, right? It's like
yeah. And that's what you have here is God's own priesthood who fight against him.
Yeah.
And that is something, you see that when we're remembering this week, the Holy Week. Today might be the arguably Last Supper, but we usually see in the in the movies that are the Romans guards come to get Jesus, right? They were the temple guards. They were not the Roman guards. If you really read what Matthew is saying, were the temple guards, and then Jesus is really go to trial by the Levitical priesthood. And anyway, so that's how do we get to that situation? And to answer the question here, why are they not chosen? And to me, the answer is that it's because we don't learn the lesson. We have all of this history upon story upon story of this happening over and over, but never the people of the day believe that this applies to them. We think they apply to everybody else except us. We are the exception, and we don't realize that all of these messages are always about God's own people exercising unjust dominion. And it's the same story. That's the whole Book of Mormon. It's the Nephites, and Isaiah is his own people, is the Jews, and so forth. So I hope we can get the lessons and can, so then we don't fall into the same trap.
Well, and so to make one other connection, maybe this is obvious and not worth saying, but I'll go ahead and say it. The chosen in this context here is the same as being elect. Those words mean the same thing. To be called and to be elected, or to be called and to be chosen. And those that are chosen, or the elect, in the book of Isaiah are described sort of synonymously. These are those who are gathered ultimately. These are those who remake Israel. These are those that join to Messiah, join to Christ in his new kingdom, in his new Jerusalem. So it's, sort of to close the loop, close the thought here. It's those that have been humbled. It's those who don't set their hearts on the things of this world, and that have learned to bring themselves into alignment with heaven's will.
That's good. On a simpler note, I feel like the only like great application I have for this is maybe as a parent and not, not wielding my power as, and making my kids do something in a certain way that would be like an unrighteous dominion or, authority. Like that's kind of like the only like, simplified version. I feel like that could apply to anybody who has kids, or if you have animals or anything that comes under your care, right? Is that, it's applicable in that way too. I know we're talking priesthood here, but at the same time, I feel like it could apply in that regard as well. Right?
And you have the parallelism here of Jacob and Israel, and we talked about maybe months ago on how they appear together also in Isaiah chapter 9, but technically they were the northern kingdom back then, and they were more like a Isaiah referred to them as the more like a fallen state. Israel being more, of course, linking back to Jacob, who became Israel, covenant, elevated, new name, and so forth. So in the end time, this can refer to many, many things, but can refer to the remnant of Jacob. The Lord is, again, they're going to become Israel. The Book of Mormon really speak about it. If you just search for remnant of Jacob in the Book of Mormon, there's some verses, right, that link to the seed of Lehi, but in Isaiah 29 refer to also those who came out of the waters of baptism. So that is
the Book of Mormon. Yeah, that's right.
And in the Book of Mormon and First Nephi 20, and that is we are called, but then being, like Cameron said, chosen as to be elect, and that is it's a spiritual category of those who are proving loyalty to the Lord. And maybe one of that is to see how we handle the position we were given, as we have given so much, and are we using that authority in a righteous way?
It's funny, elect is kind of like elite, it's kind of like we're talking about the Babylon elite system. Here we have our chosen elect system. You know what I mean? It's like, well, they're very similar in some ways,
Well, it's a religion and a state,
in
a sense, and and there is such a desire for positioning and gain in Babylon, and priestcraft is part of Babylon system, and
crazy.
This is the Lord is gonna choose Jacob, is gonna choose Israel, and then how you pronounce that word, sojourner?
Sojourner.
Sojourner. Never actually pronounced that before. I always read this, but in Hebrew it's the ger. I have a whole book on what the Torah said about the relationship of Israel and the ger. And the ger is not necessarily a traveler, but it's somebody who actually live in the community. They are attaching themselves to Israel, but then the word here is cleave, which is the same word in Genesis that a man shall cleave unto his wife, and then the parallel is very striking, because again, this is the post-fall of Babylon, and in the Book of Mormon is the people who become the Church of the Lamb when the Babylonians, after they're persecuted, the power of God come upon them. And many of these, the context here is that they are numbered, the Church of the Lamb are numbered among the the covenant people of the Lord, which is potentially maybe the Gentiles who repent. They are numbered among the natural lineages, Zero-Lehi, the Jews, and so forth. And you have that over and over in the Book of Mormon, 1 Nephi 14:2, more references in 2 Nephi 10, Jacob, and 10 Nephi 16:21, and then the one that maybe I'm going to read for time's sake is 10 Nephi 21:22. If they, the Gentiles, repent, hearken unto my words, and harden not their hearts, I will establish my church among them. And that is the same context in 1 Nephi 14. That is the church of the Lamb. And they shall come unto the covenant and be numbered among this remnant of Jacob, unto whom I have given this land for their inheritance. In context, as the seed of Lehi, as you read also here in 14:2. They shall be numbered among the seed of thy father. That's the angel speaking to Nephi, the father being Lehi. So, yeah. How do you see that play out, guys? Cameron, Rachel?
I don't know, really, to be honest, with this one.
That's a good question. I've got like 3 or 4 half-baked thoughts, but nothing that I've like.
We'll get back to that. We'll get back to you on that, Rodolfo.
I do have some thoughts, but let's move on.
I'd love to hear it. I'd love to hear it.
Sometimes I try to be cautious and be like, I have to look into that a little more before I open a big fat mouth.
Yeah. Well, the question always, the speculation is that who is the seed of Lehi, and there are different theories, and here you go into like the Heartland theory versus Mesoamerica and so forth. But yeah, maybe another day though. But definitely we see in Micah that there is a remnant that comes, and we talked about it 2 weeks ago with Cameron mentioning that there might be a remnant who comes from the house of Israel. Potentially that might be the seed of Lehi. And then the Gentiles who repent, they are going to come together. And that's the union actually of Ephraim and Manasseh, because Ephraim becomes the fullness of the Gentiles. That's their blessing. And in Genesis 48, verse 19, they become the fullness of the Gentiles. So the Gentiles are Ephraimites. And then we know because of Amulek reference in Alma chapter 8, verse 2, that Lehi was from Manasseh. So if you look at patriarchal house, as we know that was in Numbers 1, that your house is because of the house of your father. Because of Lehi, then the Lamanites, whoever they are today, the Native Americans are Manasseh. And here we see that union, the sojourner, meaning the Gentiles, but then eventually numbered among the house of Israel, among these people, which are seed of Lehi, Manasseh. And that's the mystery in Jacob 5 and also in Romans chapter 11, that how is possible, and that's a question that Leman and Lemuel they ask Nephi, right, in 1 Nephi 17, 15. How is possible that the natural branches are going to graft the wild branches? So the natural branches being the remnant and the wild branches being the Gentiles. We make fun of them because they have that question that why you don't ask the Lord. That's what they answer. And we use that to say like, oh, they were so wicked, they never asked the Lord for revelation and so forth. But the question is very complex because the question actually requires that understand that the Gentiles are Ephraimites, and that's why the grafting actually happened. So anyway.
So in relation to just that idea of the joining, the cleaving, later on in verse 20, one of the aspects of the fallen one, it says that he won't be joined with these other people in burial. So I think that's like maybe there's showing the opposite of that, right?
Well, it's a rejected branch.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he is. He's called the abhorred branch, or rejected branch. Yeah, same thing. So that there isn't that joining that we have as an example here. It's like I knew I came across that word before.
Jeremiah mentioned in Jeremiah, what is it? I think it's 4, that it's called rejected silver, I believe. So there is no alloy, or there is not some type of as metals coming together. They're rejected as anyway. But we can talk about that when we get there. This is the difference between the Isaiah 14:2, the King James, well, the Bible, and what the Joseph Smith translation adds. This is also in 2 Nephi 24, same chapter, but we have here that there's this whole section that is added in the translation, and I want to hear your thoughts, actually. So, and the people shall take them and bring them to their own place. And then here is the add-on, yea, from far unto the end of the earth, and they shall return to their own land of promise. And then the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of the Lord for servants and handmaids, and they shall take them captive, whose captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors. So, but this phrase here, I think, is significant, from far unto the end of the earth, and they shall return to their own land of promise.
Where do we have from afar? Is it say to the end of the earth, or does it say the end of heavens? And is it
end of heaven?
Say 5.
5, yeah.
Yeah. It says end of heaven. So here's from far, or the end of earth, and the other one is from far, or the end of heaven. That's crazy.
Well, and to me, that's what we are seeing in some of these chapters. So this is to the end of the end. From far can be the scattering condition of the tribes.
Oh yeah.
And again, this is, if we think about, this is Ephraim and Manasseh coming together, to Jacob and the how you pronounce that, sojourn.
Oh,
yeah. Anyway, that the ger in Hebrew. This is the blessing for them in Deuteronomy 33:17. His glory is like the firstling of the bullock. This is the oxen, but actually it's an extinct kind of oxen. It's not today a bull or a ox. And his horns are like the horns of the unicorns. With them he shall push the people together to the ends of the earth. And they are the 10,000 of Ephraim and the 10,000 of Manasseh. And back then, that represents that when the horns were sort of aligned, they were very, very strong and aligned, that from the side, it looked like one horn. That's the idea of the unicorn. And then this is in 25:20. Same context. And I will make my people with whom the Father have covenanted, I will make thy horn iron, and I will make thy hoof brass, and thou shalt beat in pieces many people, and I will consecrate their gain unto the Lord, and the substance unto the Lord of the whole earth. So this is when the people actually come together post-Babylonian destruction, and now they can gather the people. So you have a phase of gathering and then a phase of restoration. And you read that in 35:20, that they're gathering into the New Jerusalem, but eventually they're going to be restored. So that's gathering. And then restore means they're going to go back to their own lands of inheritance. So,
do you think beaten pieces is referencing like threshing? I wonder.
Yeah, it can be.
I mean, iron and brass, it's like a lot of times metalwork is beaten, but yeah, I wonder. But it also seems like maybe it has a threshing aspect. I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, and that's the second half of Isaiah. Well, Isaiah 40 and so forth, that the people go to the nations, and the judgment now upon some of that, they can cast also judgment to the Gentiles, as is mentioned there in 25:20. So, and that's when the crossover comes, because who is doing that judgment to the Gentile nations here? Is to be this entity, or is the king of Assyria coming in? or might be some type of both in parallel happening. But
So does the ends of the earth, do you know if it has any link conjugation to like the four corners?
yeah,
It seems like maybe, if it's talking about
I believe that would affect America.
Yeah.
That's my personal, yeah,
Okay.
the ends of the earth, the new world back then.
Yeah.
And then there are two groups here of so if you look at there is this group, the ones who are going to be served as servants and handmaids, and then there is a second group who are going to be captives, and those two groups are defined too in the Book of Mormon. First, servants and handmaids. Same two words appear in Joel 2 when the Lord said, "I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and also upon the servants and upon the handmaids. In those days will I pour out my spirit." And that happens in what I said, DNC 98, that because the Lord will do a strange act so he can put out his spirit upon all flesh. Same words than Joel, and then so they can prune the vineyard for the last time. So now that empowers them to go out and do the Zenon's allegory in Jacob 5. But then the idea of a servant here, you might think might be lesser, but because this is the inversion of Babylon, now a servant here becomes technically, in Zion's hierarchy, is somebody who is higher. So you become lesser as far as a title, but you are playing a proxy role, so you become higher in that Zion's hierarchy. And you have the reference here in Isaiah, how the servants become the ones who actually play a role for the house of Israel as a proxy savior. And then the handmaids also, these are the ones who become although they are in a lower position in the house, they produce offsprings, and they become a nursing mother for the house of Israel. And these are the other half of the verses. So we see that this is Jacob speaking about Isaiah 49. So, and I'm going to read it. "And blessed are the Gentiles, they whom the prophet has written." So there are two types of Gentiles. And the prophet here is Isaiah. "For behold, if so be that they shall repent and fight not against Zion," and this is what fight against Zion means, "and do unite themselves to the great and abominable church, they shall be saved." Similar context in 1 Nephi 14. This is Babylon. "For the Lord God will fulfill his covenants which he has made unto his children. And for this cause the prophet Isaiah has written these things. Wherefore they that fight against Zion and the covenant people of the Lord shall lick up the dust of their feet." And that's in Isaiah 49, right? Those who wait upon the Lord, right? And shall lick the dust of their feet, and so forth. "And the people of the Lord shall not be ashamed, for the people of the Lord are they who wait for him, for they still wait for the coming of the Messiah."
Awesome.
Wait, before we go on, I found some proof for you, Rodolfo, to make your case that the ends of the earth means
Okay, please show me.
So Isaiah 41:5. Yeah, we can click over there if you want real quick.
41:5.
41:5, yeah. So if you look at this as a parallelism, the isles saw it and feared. The ends of the earth were afraid and drew near. What Isaiah is doing is creating a sort of synonymous relationship between the isles of the sea and the ends of the earth, which makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. If you cross-reference that to 2 Nephi 10, we'll go to verse 20. Yeah, you know where I'm going with this.
Yeah, that's cool. Never met that.
"Now, my beloved brethren, seeing that our merciful God has given us so great knowledge concerning these things, Let us remember him and lay aside our sins and not hang down our heads, for we are not cast off. Nevertheless, we have been driven out of the land of our inheritance, but we have been led to a better land. For the Lord has made the sea our path, and we are upon an isle of the sea. And they have Isaiah in mind as they're quoting this. So when it talks about, the verse we read there, Isaiah 11,
Yeah.
I think is definitely in mind, right? Where it says, Isles of the Sea. Does it not say Isles of the Sea in Isaiah 11? Maybe I'm remembering that wrong.
Yeah, it does.
Islands, that's what it is.
Islands,
yeah, when it talks about gathering the remnants, right, from Shinar and Hamath and from the islands of the sea. Yeah, verse 11.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So, yeah, the point is they're saying this is the category of, like, if you were to try and map out where are we right now, like if Israel is the middle and they've been pushed all the way to the periphery, right, to the ends of the earth, to the islands of the sea, it's like the outer rim of the known world. That's how they're defining themselves. We're on an island of the sea. We're on like the absolute edge of the world. Well, there you go. America is the end.
But if you search
as
for
interpreted by Jacob,
that's 66 references in the standard work.
Wow.
Maybe you can find what it meant back then, but pretty sure Isaiah mentioned so many of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the Book of Mormon, you
but at the very least, it's one way that you can. It's one instance of that pattern being fulfilled, and you're in good company with Jacob. So
here you go, and guys. That's how it happens, just naturally. You just put the pieces together, just like that. It's pretty awesome. Okay, where are we?
Verse 3.
Oh, shoot. Oh, gosh.
Okay.
Well, this is to give credit to Isaiah, though. Like, he is putting, there is no wasted words. Like, he's not multiplying. Like, every little phrase it's interconnected. And the problem is it's interconnected in Isaiah itself, but then everybody else is using Isaiah as the Rosetta Stone, right? It's taking it from Isaiah. So then you can spend like Doctrine and Covenants, like you used when you start becoming familiar with Isaiah. It's all over everything has been based on what Isaiah actually said in the Book of Mormon. The whole thing is based on Isaiah. So yeah.
True.
Great. You guys want me to read this?
Yeah.
And it shall be in the day Yahweh gives you rest from your pain and from your turmoil and from the hard labor which was worked upon you, that you shall take up this taunt against the king of Babylon and say, how the oppressor has ceased, the raging has ceased, the golden city ceased. Yahweh has broken the staff of the wicked, the rod of the rulers, striking peoples in overflowing wrath, a striking without ceasing, ruling nations in anger, a persecution without restraint.
Well, in that day, that's the day of reference to that time, right, where the Lord is going to do all of this. And well, you have something on rest, Rachel. I just have on this is the word for sorrow, same word in Genesis. With that's sorrow, you shall, what is it, labor?
Word. Yeah.
And then with sorrow, that you'll.
The sorrow and sign flee away. That's like a big one, yeah.
Yeah, but it begins in Genesis when after the curse of Eden.
Multiply your sorrows.
Multiply with sorrow, and then eat the bread. Like it's all, that's the same word twice there for sorrow. And that represents human struggle, right? And then the word here for turmoil. And that's a very interesting word too in Hebrew. It's like anxiety, stress. And I did a post on our Facebook group how these are at the core psychological pain. The hard label is cruel labor. The Hebrew is same for the cruel master. And this is the same hard labor actually described in Exodus 1, what Pharaoh is doing, the hard labor So then it says our lives became bitter. So this is a almost same line than Exodus 1. And Pharaoh being a type of Satan. So Pharaoh, the dragon, Satan, same idea. And it's describing the psychological trauma that people experience because of Babylon. How Babylon gives you some things for exchange of your freedom, and he gives us pleasure, but then turns that into addiction, and that turns into a very psychological abuse relationship with yourself, inverts all of our dynamics between men and women, between ecclesiastical order, the economical society. Everything becomes about oppressing one another. And then eventually the government, under a Babylonian condition, becomes tyrannical, and there is a physical persecution. But all of that, and there's so much also, how can I say this? Our understanding of reality, what does it mean to have a healthy relationship with the Lord, has been damaging because of our culture and the Babylonian system. And we don't know really how much the Lord loves us, and that all of these stepping stones that are in the way for us to go to Him in truth and experience His love and His atonement. And Satan has changed that. It's been a counterfeit. So eventually we're going to rest from all of that. And that's going to be, and the word for rest here is the same word for the word Noah, or when the ark rested. And Deuteronomy is the same word for safety. So Cameron mentioned that before, there is the idea of fear in Babylon, but then there is safety in Zion. And safety is not necessarily from danger, more than assurance and confidence that the Lord is with us and He loves us, and we have that proper relationship with Him. So anything to add on those verses, guys? Cameron, Rachel?
Aaron said, I agree with that, Rodolfo. With this world, it's so easy for trust to be broken, which totally affects how we experience God. There's this great quote from C.S. Lewis. This is one of my favorites to keep in my back pocket. He says something to the effect of, the adversary will often send lies to the world in pairs, hoping that your disdain and your extra dislike for one will drive you into the arms of the other. And you see a lot of that, where, you know, this false dichotomy gets created and people think, well, I really, really hate this thing, and therefore the opposite must be true. And in some instances, in a lot of instances, maybe most, it's like Satan has presented you with two paths. It's like he's given you a fork in the road that's already the wrong road, right? And you're miles down, and gives you kind of the illusion of feeling like you're choosing something. So just to your point of Babylon sort of polluting or affecting even one's image or concept of God, a lot of the times we unknowingly we're not believing in a true thing that's been revealed to us. We're believing the opposite of a thing we hate because of our experience. And those aren't like always necessarily the same thing. They can be, but it's important to, I think, you know, pay attention and parse through some of that. So,
well, he in Exodus 6, when Moses came, and he literally said he wants his people to go and enjoy a Sabbath of rest in the wilderness. And Pharaoh gets very upset, right? And he wants them to not have no rest, keep building. And it's the metaphor here is you are building up. That's what Zion is. You're building up you're working up your own salvation, but you never achieve spiritual rest. With rest as the fullness of His glory, as His presence. So we are lapsing always into keep doing something, but never really enjoying it. The Lord offers rest. And I think the we have this we turn our religion into this to do things that we're always doing, but we are never actually coming to
A knowledge of truth.
Okay,
a place of rest, a
I'll
place
give you a complimentary verse here on that.
please.
So Isaiah 29, and this of course gets at those that fight against Zion to add to the context here. Isaiah 29, 7 and 8. The multitude of all the nations that fight against Ariel, even all that fight against her and her munition, and that distress her, shall be as a dream of a night vision. It shall even be as when a hungry man dreameth, and behold, he eateth, but he awaketh, and his soul is empty. Or when as a thirsty man dreameth, and behold, he drinketh, but he awaketh, and behold, he is faint, and his soul hath appetite. So shall the multitude of all the nations be that fight against Zion. So, I mean, there's kind of this sense in which I got to be careful in how I say this.
Let's say it.
Like if you find yourself in a condition where you are perpetually exhausted and not finding rest, and it feels like it's always out of reach, and it feels like, there was even a period in my life where there were certain things I really, really wanted to be true because they made sense to me. But it felt like the more I leaned into it, the more it was kind of like drinking salt water. Like if you're stranded in an ocean on a raft and it's like, oh man, I'm really thirsty. And you drink the salt water because you're like, this is what I need. This like looks so appealing, but like it's actually dehydrating you even more, than it seems like it would. That ought to be an indicator that there is some degree of unbelief or a false belief that you've internalized somewhere that has you, say, perhaps fighting against the Lord and the place he's trying to lead you and the place he's trying to take you.
That's so cool. We have a few slides. Rachel, you have something?
I was just going to say, so I just laughing at the hungry man dreaming when my first pregnancy. So I've told you guys I'm super sick the whole time. I can't eat at all. I'm throwing up. Anyways, but I dream often that I'm hungry and eating food, and I love to watch food cooking shows and stuff because, like, you just can't actually stand to smell food or anything. But I dreamt that I was starving and I got in line at this cafeteria and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. And when I went through the line, the man told me, you can't have any food. And I was like, what do you mean? Everyone else is eating. Well, I can't have any food. And he's like, you can't have any food. And so I left the place and I dusted my feet at the door. Not like I had, I've never looked into that thing, that phrase, I don't know anything about it. It was the weirdest thing ever. And I just remember waking up and I was like, I am starving, but it was the weirdest dream. So I totally, whenever I come across that, I laugh because I'm like, oh, I know that feeling of hunger and thirst and to dream about food and want it so bad. And you wake up the same. So anyways, it's funny. I don't know.
I've never had that dream, but I've probably had the dream that everyone has where you have to go to the bathroom and like
it's kind of the same, yeah.
Yeah. Then you wake up and you're like, oh, that's why I was.
You wake up and you gotta pee, yeah. Anyways, super funny.
So we're introducing here the king of Babylon. I have this quick slide, and this is Ishtar cylinder, and there is similar cylinders or the same. There is a lot of. They were using the same imagery for Mesopotamian or Akkadian gods like Inanna and Enlil, which is this guy here. But she is the woman Babylon, Ishtar, and then she was always riding the beast. She's riding literally above. She's always wear a feet on a lion. In this case, she's all in the beast. But then if you look at more on the, sorry, I didn't do this graphic, but this is some of the rendering from those cylinders that she is Ishtar, and we talked about 2 weeks ago that Ishtar was a type of the feminine aspect of Babylon, the god of love and war and so forth. But in the book of Revelation, you see the woman riding the beast, but in the cylinder there is somebody else, which is Enlil, which we can talk more about that next week. And he has some horns, but he is the one who is controlling the whole thing. So she is the one visually and top of the beast, The idea is that you want to go higher in this beast system. You have to encounter her, and you have to sell yourself, and becomes a counterfeit relationship, adultery, and anyway, and all that come with that. But this is in section 86, and after they have fallen, this is about the talking about the parable of the seed, and then this is a reference to the apostles after they have fallen asleep, the great persecutor of the church, the apostate, the whore, even Babylon, that maketh all nations to drink of her cup, and whose hearts the enemy, even Satan, sitteth to reign. Behold, he soweth the tares, wherefore the tares show the wheat, and drive the church into the wilderness. That whole thing is an archetype, but here you have both elements of the whore, the one who persecutes the church, but then Satan is technically the king of Babylon. He's the one actually playing the whore. I thought it was good to introduce that as a potential candidate for who the king of Babylon is.
There's always a puppet involved, or something you're looking at, but then there's something behind controlling that you don't realize. That's good.
And here the verse says the oppressor has ceased, and that can be a direct reference to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, but it's looking forward. So the golden city has ceased, and that was a reference to Babylon. Now, when King Nebuchadnezzar in the book of Daniel chapter 2, he was the head of gold and the statue of the dream. So gold was a reference of Babylon, and then it's a counterfeit because in the book of Revelation, right, the city of God, Zion, is a city of pure gold. The streets are pure gold. But again, this may be a counterfeit of what Zion should be, and it's the reverse of the inversion. But it's so subtle, right? We talk about before about this being some type of spell that Babylon has put upon the people, making you believe you are in Zion, but you are actually in Babylon. And and the gold can be actually literal physical gold as currency, as the current system that we use for our whole economy.
Doesn't talk somewhere too about like pure, fine, real gold having it's like it's see-through glass or somewhere where it's like I realized, wait, there's a gold that's different that is different than maybe like the Babylonian gold color versus something that's more pure, finer. Cool. Okay, so in the Babylonian epic Enuma Elish, I just wanted to kind of set up a little bit about rest here. This story is like supposedly pre-Earth configuration. And so basically the idea is Marduk battles against Tiamat, who's the evil, chaotic person. And she had risen up against the gods, but after he defeats her, he's been in battle, he wants a place to rest. Okay, so his rest has to do with him needing it after he's had this battle and conquered Tiamat. And so he's crowned, but he still needs this place, a kingdom, a house, kind of what we're talking about here. I just thought, I like it because in essence, the Lord is giving the people rest after they've had this hard labor, their turmoil, their sorrow. And so it's kind of just maybe a parallel with whatever it is that you're needing rest from. And here in this story, it's from battling the evil chaos monster. And so I kind of like that in relationship to looking at the people needing rest from oppression. And so then, let me see if I don't know when I'm going into rest in a little bit. Okay. In relation to the rest too, Rodolphe, you had the slide on Babylon and falling asleep. And I was just thinking there's a difference between your body resting versus falling asleep because
good point.
In scriptures, this like sleep doesn't ever seem to have a really great connotation. It's either death or like delusion, spiritual delusion, right? Or like I don't ever think of it as a good thing. So rest, I would say, is different than sleep.
And perhaps that's that counterfeit, right?
Yeah.
That it will pacify them into a sense of carnal security, and we might say all is well, and we have that sense of, I don't know, carnal pacification, and it's parallel with the being drunk and asleep, rather than awake and arise and all of that. But
yeah, that's good. I like that.
Such a good metaphor, yeah.
Okay, what do I have next? I didn't finish this slide. I'm sorry, you guys. I just thought we'd talk a little bit just about what the rod and the staff is. Where are we? Is this in the right verse?
Yeah.
The Lord's broken the staff of the wicked and the rod of the rulers. Then I think I go back into. But basically, other than saying, that the rod and the staff represent a king of Assyria, a king of Babylon type, and then we have the axe. So not specifically the word axe in here, but we have the feller, or like the one who chops down trees, that we're going to come across in a few verses.
And this can be also a false authority too, like Satan, in some sense, is the prince of the world.
Yeah.
And reading Exodus, when Moses comes with the rod, with the staff, and the staff becomes, right, a serpent, then the counterfeit also do the same, right? The staff can become a serpent. So perhaps here that the staff of priestcraft was used also for authority. Like Babylon, she and First Nephi 13 says that she yoked them with the what is the word, guys? With the yoke of iron. So it's First Nephi.
You said choke. I didn't hear the first word.
Sorry, I don't know the word I'm saying either. Yeah. So let's see. Yoke them with the yoke of iron. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is the main child will rule them with the rod of iron. So it's a counterfeit. One rod rules the nations and righteousness, but then here it becomes a yoke that she brings them down into captivity. So
because Isaiah 11, we have the righteous version of like the scepter.
Yep.
Staff, right? Like, I'm trying to think what is the word, but so basically in Isaiah, the rod and the staff they represent this false authority, but there's also a righteous aspect and rule of them too, if you're wielding them not in unrighteous power.
Well, so and let's see. So in Revelation 13, so and they worship the dragon, which gave power unto the beast, and they worship the beast. So the dragon here persecute the woman into the wilderness. I personally believe that Pharaoh, the dragon, because that's the same in Ezekiel 29, is a reference to Satan, who give the power, and this is authority here, authority unto the beast. So whatever Satan,
it's like he transfers it over, right? For a time,
staff and
do whatever,
the rod and the staff then goes to the next one. That's why also very quickly on 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. So this is when the son of the men of sin, men of lawlessness, which is the beast, the Antichrist, is going to be revealed. He comes, I think it's in verse. So even him who's coming is after the working of Satan. So he comes after Satan with all powers and signs and lying wonders. So that's Revelation 13. So you have Satan, but then he only can go far enough. He will turn tyrannical with the system of Babylon and persecution. But then the one who comes after, that's why I when Cameron asked me, I think maybe there is some type of sequence. And Somebody's calling me from Mexico. I'm Chilean. So
I was like, those aren't your people. That's the wrong. That's the wrong.
I don't know. I've never been to a phone call from Mexico. It's Mexico City. No, from the yeah. Anyway, so he's going to be able to take maybe what Satan wanted to do.
He goes beyond, right? Beyond the bounds. That's where we have one who's like overflows, overfloods.
So he can only go far enough, and then he needs to give that authority to this other individual. And anyway, so
it's like he passes the ball off to the next player, and they run it down to the end zone there. Okay, yeah, that's good.
Another cross-reference that maybe came to mind here, Isaiah 36:6. This is just a reference to staff, and I know there are lots of these in the book of Isaiah, but it felt appropriate in keeping with what we're talking about. Yeah, thou trustest in the staff of this broken reed on Egypt, whereon if a man lean, it will go into his hand and pierce it. So is Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, to all that trust him. There's an element of those that are looking for salvation and security in the king of Babylon, right? When he comes, there's a it's both a judgment, but there's also a sense in which there are people that if they can't see kind of beyond this material world or perceive, the salvation that the Lord offers, they'll prefer the idea of a renewed telestial world as opposed to up leveling to a terrestrial glory.
The thing I think of too with that verse, I don't know why, but it says if you lean on it, it will pierce the hand. And I always think of but it's not, a sure place. You know what I mean? It's like the first initial but not, it's not made sure, It's like, oh, it's kind of, maybe interesting there. I don't know if it's actually piercing the palm, but kind of cool.
Should we, before go over, I think there are a few comments.
We miss, probably.
Yeah, just to read, and then maybe we can.
Yeah.
Let's see. I think we've kept up with a lot of these. Well, more or less.
Yeah, you can pick and choose.
So Sherry, that's a good comment. So Cheryl, could the cosmic judgment be what causes the end of the Assyrian power? And I think the reference here is to the first slide I believe we had on the. Let me get there. Well, part of it. So I would say that the cosmic judgment actually, after the judgment that happens in Isaiah 13, then the Medes come, but we make the case that it might be that can be a parallel to the Assyrian army. So there is some cosmic destruction that allow them somehow, wherever these people are coming from, they are going to come because of the cosmic destruction. But then there is a cosmic destruction also that put an end to the Assyrian. And if that's in Isaiah 30, that the Lord will, it looked like thunderbolts or something that will fall on the Assyrian, that he won't be able to, it will absolutely overthrow him. In the book of Revelation, then you have some type of cataclysm that in Revelation chapter 8, what is it? The wormwood, that thing that falls into the earth.
The star that's on fire, yeah.
And then in 9, right, because of it, then the bottomless pit is open, and then you have this locust plague coming out, and they cause destruction on the earth. But then you have more judgment coming in after, which then ends that other entity. So,
did we talk about a couple of weeks ago that Ishtar is where we get the word star or astro from, and it's the same root of the word disaster?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, or even catastrophe.
Mm.
That's cool.
Yeah, there's a cosmic undertone there.
Well, Ishtar, star, and then Venus is because of Ishtar is Venus in Babylonian mythology, the morning star and all of that. So maybe there is something connected there.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Thank you, Cameron. So I don't know if you're familiar with that. Sorry, Howie. And then let's see. I think that's it.
Okay, we're back. We're on verse 7 and 8 now, I think.
Yep. Let me go all the way. Okay, I'll read this. The whole earth rests is quiet. They break forth into singing. Even the cypresses rejoice over you, the cedars of Lebanon. Since you have laid down, no failure comes against us.
It's funny because like the way that almost reads is and like sort of how do you describe this? Like when movies try to depict uneducated people from the South or something, they'll say fella, but instead of saying fella, they'll say feller, you know, like, oh, that feller over there.
Like people, yeah, you say warsh or like they
Right,
use
right.
add a R somewhere.
Yeah. No feller comes up against us.
But yeah, it's not a fella or a fellow. It's a feller, actually.
Right.
That's funny.
Right. And the idea here is this is oh, why is the word eluding me all of a sudden?
Hewer or
Yeah.
axe chopper,
Lumberjack.
Yeah. I was thinking red and black plaid. What is that?
I know. Yeah, I know. Me too. I'm like the big beards, the burly guys up in Alaska. What are they called?
Yeah, my great grandpa was one in Canada. There we go. Oh my gosh, can't think of the word either.
Yes. So of course, coming in and chopping down the cedars of Lebanon was the thing to do if you were invading. It was sort of your way of making your mark, and there's a symbolic parallel there to the sort of pillars of society, right? If you want to come and you want to overthrow a system, you come and you chop down and you replace, so to speak, the things that make it what it is in really important ways. So there's an element of that with, Babylonian invasion. So of course this is the reversal, right? Even the cypresses rejoice over you, the cedars of Lebanon. Since you have lain down, no feller comes up against us.
Well, you have whereas in Isaiah 29 that Lebanon shall be again a
fruitful field.
A fruitful field. In the mythology, you have the Garden of Eden. Technically, it was in a mountain because of Ezekiel 28.
Yep.
And then you have in the top the garden. There's a good paper that there might be some type of wall around the garden, but then at the bottom there was a cedar forest who was surrounding the Garden of Eden. So, like, was Gilgamesh the one who went? He went to the cedar forest, right?
Yeah, that was It was like
to find to become immortal and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But so you're right, like a pillar, something that safeguard the forest, like the dens of the forest safeguard the Garden of Eden. That can be a reference to of you have Israel around the camp, you have the priesthood, and then you have the tabernacle. So you have the Levites in the tabernacle. So the Levites were some type of like the forest that they were protecting the boundary from the sacred place. So this can be a reference, right, of, well, the cedars become prideful, so then the Lord needs to cut them down. But eventually, that's what Isaiah mentioned. Again, shall Lebanon become a fruitful field. So the cedars are going to play that role, the proper role they have to play.
Okay, I think I have a few slides on rest here. Let's see, what else do we have? Oh, okay. So this is from Isaiah 66. You guys remember what the context is of 6? I can't remember. I'm just going to go through this real fast. This connects back to being called and chosen, okay? So Lord's asking here, he says that heaven is his throne and the earth is his footstool. And he's asking, where is the house that ye build unto me? And where is the place of my rest?
That's the very covenant, by the way. That's what the Lord tells David in 2 Samuel chapter 7. He has no house, and he asks David to build a house for him.
All right. Yeah, that's true, right? And then, then Solomon is the one who's able to build it, and he isn't, because he was, I guess, because of so much battle and war, right? That maybe multiple reasons. Anyways, that's going off on a tangent. Okay. So, so basically at the end of this, he's pulling in, I think this is reference to temple stuff. I'm going to skip ahead to, he that killeth an ox as if he slew a man, he that sacrificeth a lamb as if he cut off a dog's neck, he that offereth an oblation as if he offered swine's blood, he that burneth incense as if he blessed an idol. So in essence, he's saying whatever temple thing you got going on here is not my house. It's not working. And we could probably tie that back into Isaiah chapter 1. But so he says that the people, they've chosen their own ways, and that their souls delights in abomination. He says, I will also choose their delusions, and I will bring their fears upon them, because when I called, none did answer. When I spake, they did not hear, but they did evil before my eyes and chose that which I delighted not. So just to kind of echo back to that being called and chosen, here's another aspect of it, of not answering and not hearing when he did call. And then some allusion to some temple things too.
Maybe a hot take. I know we talk about it between us, and I don't know if all of us agree on this, but here, a reference to an anti-temple is a rebellion. It's an act of rebellion, and the word delusion here parallels with what Paul is saying, because they want delusion, the Lord will send them a delusion, and then
strong delusion, right? Isn't it?
A strong delusion, and then whatever they build as temple is what then the Antichrist desecrates, and then that causes the abomination of desolation. So we look at we want to haste that third temple building as a good thing, but I don't know. To me, part of it's like we should read what the actual temple looks like in Ezekiel 40. It might not be the same temple that the Temple Institute is ready to go. But anyway, that would be another discussion.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that would be a fun one to go into. It'd be controversial, but super fun.
I wonder if there's not a parallel there to Isaiah 1.
Huh.
Yeah, I can see that too.
Yeah, that's a whole spin. Yeah, man. That's...
Probably, beginning and context, both of them. Because it has the ox and the. I wonder. The dog's neck is interesting too, but the swine's blood always seems to play into like weird idolatry and rituals and unclean things, right?
Yeah. Well, and what is it? Antiochus Epiphanes in the book of Maccabees. He is the type of the Antichrist. He is the type in Daniel chapter 9. He is the one who offered
tries to get them to eat the flesh and drink the blood of the pig. Yeah.
He offered the pig and the holy of holies, and that's directly the reference that Daniel is using in Daniel chapter 9. And he's in book of Maccabees, which we have and search diligently .net. So the sponsor.
That is a good one for type of
that's the sponsor for today.
Sponsor of the day.
Sponsor.
The book of Maccabees specifically.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay. Sorry, guys, I'm running out of steam. Okay, rest. This is the word that did mean coalition, and I couldn't fit it on the slide, and I kept like, and now I wish I'd put it on there. Okay. Really quick, we have rest in verse 3 and 7 of 14. It's a root word. It means to rest, settle down, dwell, stay, let fall, place, let alone, withdraw, give comfort, cease, speak, confederate, lay, let down, be quiet, remain, cause. Okay, so anyways, an aspect of this, I have 2 slides on this, I think. It can be an absence of movement, but also being settled in a particular place. And so it has like a finality tied to it, of being like resting or set in your place, like the inheritance of land or promised land would be, right? But it also like denotes victory or salvation. And so victory would have to do with like maybe the battle or war that like in Enuma Elish, the Lord's tired from fighting and needs a place to rest. And then there security is an aspect of it too. And Rodolfo mentioned earlier about the ark resting on the mountaintop, and that's the same word there. Or they have locusts resting too in Egypt, if you want to see it in a really negative way. And then the hyphal root, it moves in 2 different directions. One means to deposit or cause something or someone to, like God deposits man in the garden. It's like he places him there. And then also it can mean to allow something or someone to be at rest. You like by leaving them alone, right? Where God leaves somebody or something alone. And then there's the aspect of spiritual rest, which has the absence of trouble. And trouble could be one of the descriptors we used earlier when we're talking about the different kinds of emotional stress and turmoil that the people receive a rest from. Isaiah 28 here, 12, to whom he said, this is the rest wherewith ye may cause the weary to rest, and this is the refreshing, yet they would not hear. And so there's another aspect of maybe the Lord trying to talk and speak to people and call them, but they are not hearing. Okay, so the martial use of this, it has to do with God's promise and the fulfillment of his promises, essentially to defeat Israel's enemies and to give them rest in their land. And so let's see, that continued rest, it's contingent upon their obedience, and we can tie that back to the idea of a covenant being, you can tell I'm getting tired.
Rest.
The 2, I got up early, so I've been getting up early. The 2 aspects of a covenant when you're, what is it? Geez, you guys. You actually have to live the covenant in order for it to then be fulfilled. What is the word?
Unconditional.
Yeah, thank you. Conditional, unconditional, and conditional. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So contingent upon their obedience, meaning it's first, conditional, and then once you live up to that, then it's unconditional. So we have David as he's like, I talked about this earlier. He was kind of like an instrument or a man of war, and he, for whatever reasons, he wasn't allowed to build the house for God, his temple, but then Solomon is the one who did, even though he ended up falling too. So I don't know how that works, but okay. So the last aspect here I just want to touch on is the idea of Sabbath rest. And there's the idea of like totally ceasing from labor with that in Genesis. And the idea of ceasing and stopping from like worldly pursuits. You can also enter into like a state of victory, salvation, rest, all those things kind of the same thing. It can be a state of mind or being. Obviously, it's God's actual presence is the only one that really makes that rest possible. And let's see. So we have the idea of that true rest being like a Masonic era or age or millennial age. Let's see. And that comes, basically through Christ. So that's a little bit on some of the ideas of the word rest that have to do with this chapter in those 2 places. Cameron, you want to read this? This is just basically I rehash a slide from the last time we talked about when the Assyrians felled the forest and that was a type for them.
Yeah.
But this
Some
is different.
colors. Isaiah 14:8 comes from karat. Primitive root to cut, as an off, down, or asunder, to destroy or consume, specifically to covenant, make an allegiance or bargain, originally by cutting flesh and passing between the pieces. Be chewed, be confederate, make a league, fail, feller, hew down. Trees and forests symbolize cosmic order, sacred space, royal power, kingdom, and dominion. Great men and rulers were often compared to a mighty tree, symbols of strength, fertility, reach, and kingship. Cutting down trees was both a military act, often during a siege, and a symbolic one, representing the loss of life, vitality, and stability, the humiliation of a people, the collapse of an old order. It's great. Sorry, guys, my camera's got me all blurry for some reason.
Yeah, and that's the word in Genesis 15, berit karat, which is the same kind of almost same root to cut a covenant.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's
Crazy.
and there's a whole symbolism behind what that means. But
yeah, but it's so funny. That's feller and then rest. Also, they both have the aspect of being confederate with something or someone. So, okay, Rodolfo mentioned Gilgamesh just briefly before, and he was a Sumerian king of Uruk, which later the story became like a Babylonian epic. But so basically, we talked about the cedar forest, and in one aspect, it could represent this like sacred cosmic space. And you guys mentioned how it's like this boundary or in relation to pillars. So basically, Gilgamesh, he travels with Enkidu, and they have to fight off this monstrous being called Humbaba. And the forest is like described as this divine and terrifying thing belonging to the gods, and they cut it down. And so basically the idea of that would be is like the human kings invading the sacred domain of the gods. So it would be like reaching beyond the boundary like we have in Isaiah 8, where he overfloods the boundaries or the banks like a river does, and going beyond that order or boundary that's been set. I don't know if you guys want to add anything else.
And there is a case that Nimrod was Gilgamesh, but
yeah, that ties into the whole
mighty one becoming a mighty one, mighty panther.
Yeah, and the Iraq War and Hillary Clinton's FOIA to request, where Gilgamesh's body was. I mean, there's some really fun things we could go into there too. Not tonight, but
I think we should call it until here.
Yeah. I don't think we make it to Sheol.
Yeah, this is so much dense for next week, and here is where it becomes very fun.
Gross. Gross is the word.
But, there's so many. The world never dies in section 76 for the Sons of Perdition.
Yeah, we'll have to define Sheol and like some of the
that's
aspects of it in the worm. Okay, let's call it there. It's 9:00. That's pretty good.
Do we have any comments, Cameron, that you want to close or read? Or sorry, you're muted, Cameron.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
I was just saying, it looks like we got a couple we could read here. Saspin, I know your name isn't Saspin. I don't remember what it was though. Sarah Aspen, maybe. Could chopping down the cypress of Lebanon also represent cutting down lineages and power? I understand it might also symbolize the wealth of the nation. Yeah, so I think Rachel's slide kind of got to this a little bit. It's multi-layered symbolism. Obviously, trees are a fractal symbol of reality. A branch is a smaller version of the tree, right? It's continuing to sort of produce posterity. And so I think, you could make a strong argument that the pillar families of society, let's say, could be represented in that symbolism.
Yeah, like a family tree, right? It's like the lineage, the offspring, the
right. Yeah, or dynasties.
Yeah.
You know, even if it's not like the ruling sort of figure. Yeah, the old order of things, right? Sabbath rest is also a day of restitution or restoration as well. Yeah, there's, you know, in Language of Creation by Matthew Pajot. That's an awesome book for cosmic symbolism. It's interesting. His take on Sabbath and rest is if you're kind of counting music in a circle, the seventh beat is like the rest beat. It's like the off. It's the remainder. It's sort of the piece that you kind of like let rest to sort of set everything else back in order. And it is to a week what like the end of your day is to a day, right? It's the moment of rest and of reset, and yeah, it's the time of restitution, right?
Yeah, the word actually is seven yourself. Also is connected to covenant. You make a covenant. That's in Genesis 22, and literally the word means been used there for the covenant among the whales. The dispute between Abraham and Abimelech was they seven themselves as a covenant. But
are you on the next comment there?
Yeah, he was.
Was that the one you were?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
So. Yeah, you know, there's this interesting sense in which, like God creates by dividing, right? We read on creation; it's the series of divisions, and that's how He's creating. So you, like, in order to create something, you have to define what it's not as well as what it is, and you have to draw boundaries around it, right? So. Yeah, when you're like consecrating something, you're naming its purpose as well as literally we talk about being set apart or setting something apart, right? Those are sort of the same ideas. The sort of boundaries are kind of being cut together, if you will.
Yeah, and you have in the Book of Mormon maybe a distinction between a desire of entering into a covenant and actually enter into a covenant. And if you take Genesis 15, the model here is Berik Karat, to cut a covenant, and that ties to circumcision, but then that's from the heart. So I can make the case that like baptism is, and I think Todd Cameron has mentioned this, is a desire to enter into a covenant. That's in Alma 7, rather than an actual maybe covenant, because the covenant only happens when you offer your broken heart and your contrite spirit and you are baptized with fire. That's when you are actually enter into a covenant, because you are removing the boundary, you're cutting yourself, your heart becomes open to the Lord. So yeah, that takes some of our covenant language to a whole new level, and even that becomes conditional. So you enter into a covenant that's conditional, and now you need to prove loyalty and to make it unconditional. So
it's like you have to live up to those boundaries, and then once you've lived that fullness, then there has to be a new boundary in order to ascend and live a different law and covenant, right? So you have to break
the covenant. It's a treaty, and then it becomes a grant after you are, and just look for in the Book of Mormon, the Lord shall grant eternal life. That's when the covenant becomes unconditional. But there is a few comments back very quickly. I think Cheryl mentioned about I don't know. Okay, perfect. So the verse for rest, Rachel, can that be related to the half hour of silence in the Book of Revelation?
I'm looking the which verse? Oh.
So the when the earth shall rest.
Oh, that's a good question. I have no idea.
Well, what is the half hour of silence?
Yeah, I would have to define that.
Yeah, I think somebody, I
I
think
don't know if I can. But
Dinkerkov, he made the connection. That's 21 years. If you do the math, I don't think it means like a
I
specific.
think silence is maybe different than rest, but there is a quiet aspect of it. Yeah, it does have it does mean quiet in one aspect, but I don't know that it fits in that framework.
Yeah, the way that the DNC frames it is it's similar to like the 3 days of darkness and between Christ's death and resurrection,
right? Yeah.
Where it's like a time where darkness rules, right? And the heavens are silent, so to speak.
Maybe, yeah, when things go dark too, that kind
of moment of judgment. Yeah.
Good question, though. I hadn't thought of that.
Well, when I read it, I think last year I went over the book of Revelation one more time. It felt too that there was something about that for John's time during his vision, there was a 30 actual minutes of silence for him. After then he saw the next block of judgment coming in. So because it gets very intense after the half hour silence. So it's not really what leads to that millennial rest that maybe we're reading here. So
maybe it's a quiet break period to quickly prepare for what's coming.
Get a little bit of breathing, right? The
Yeah,
Lord will give you a little bit of Jehovah and the seven will destroy the king of Babylon. Technically, yes. How that will happen, it will be some type of in Isaiah 13 cataclysm happening, but then in some of for example, First Nephi 14, you see the nations. Well, in First Nephi 22, when Nephi give us then another go back to the great Abominable Church, they will eat their own flesh, so will be some type of war among them. Maybe followed by a cataclysm. I don't know. And then some of the idea of the beast coming after, maybe also playing a role in that ending that destruction. So you don't want to be there for sure. Whatever that is. Okay.
I will say, but that's my definition of Sabbath was just based on Old Testament. I do have have a book by a rabbi about Sabbath with the whole more like spiritual aspect of it that's different. I'll have to check that, you guys, and get back to you.
That's Rib also mentioned Tukara Covenant.
Explain the
I think so. I read something before. It's been a while, but I can double check and maybe we can come back to that.
Yeah, on that last comment there on being still and the connection to, knowing God. I think that the nature of judgment is that it is intended to bring us to a point of stillness. This is the nature of death, right? Which is a similar sort of pattern. It's like things break down because it's intended to bring you to a place of stillness such that you can hear the Lord's voice and from there be reconstructed. Like we talk about how in Isaiah 3, Zion has to go down into the dust. And then, back on the other side of Isaiah 52, it's being invited to awake and arise and come out of the dust. And it's sort of like the pattern is, you'll be tried and refined and broken down to the point where you're willing to sort of listen to God and you can hear his voice and you're not going to resist. And so I think that's the purpose of death. That's the purpose of stillness and silence and where all those things come together.
Like a better ability to hear. But Ray, Shell, and I always talk about wanting to be able to hear when there's chaos and stuff going on. It's like I still, it's like I still want to be able to hear when there's chaos and be able to, in both moments of stillness and craziness, be able to hear. But I like that aspect of that a lot, where it's like it gives you that opportunity to listen. That's cool.
So in the book of Jericho, book of Joshua, when they are in Joshua chapter 6, so when they're marching to Jericho, they have silence for 6 days, and then in the 7 days when they start shouting, and you have the trumpets, and that's a very nice parallelism with Revelation. But yeah, it seems like silence was the prelude for then the whatever sound waves come more effectively, who then make the whole all the walls of Jericho to fall down. So okay, and last Cameron closer here, and then we call it a day.
Yeah, could it be that being still is a way that hearing God is more like dwelling with God? There is this idea that God dwells in one eternal now, and all things past, present, and future are before him continually. And so I do think that there's a very real sense in which learning to be still and learning to be extremely present is sort of key to properly hearing God's voice. Not getting too in your head, not getting too like abstracted from yourself. The pattern of the fall is they become self-conscious, right? They see their own nakedness. It's a little death. It's like the idea of your spirit separating from your body, and then you're like looking at yourself. Like that's kind of what's happening. And I think the resurrection obviously is the inverse. It's the fusion of your spirit and your body together so that you're fully embodied. It's to be more embodied. And obviously resurrection is very closely tied to coming into God's presence as well for those reasons. So yes, I do believe that that being still has a relationship to dwelling with God.
Awesome. Okay, so next week is going to be a lot of fun speculation. So
well, there's lots of patterns in other scriptures that seem to tie to it. Lots of mythology, there's just lots. It's like all over the place. So there has to be some thread of this that's true and real, because it's everywhere, right?
Yeah.
And it's crazy. Very fun.
Well, and have a wonderful unleavened bread feast tomorrow. Yes. Conference weekend, first fruits Sunday, Easter, and whatever your traditions are.
Christ is king, I guess, is what we say.
Yeah. Focus on Christ and
the resurrection. That's a good theme for the weekend. I like that.
A lot of things that have been thrown, right, as far as worshiping. But simplify. I think the idea is rest rather than keep building blocks. That's what Pharaoh wants us to do. And
slow down and being present.
Yeah, being present, and
opposed to too busy where you can't hear and think.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Good one.
Good night.